Hey guys, my name's Aaron and this is Autodesk 3D Studio Max 2016 for beginners to learn about how to create snow. Alright, so here we are, here's our basic layout here, and we also have perspective view right here. So what we're going to do right now is enlarge this view by going to the bottom right hand corner and enlarging this. What we're going to do is we're going to create a plane, and this plane does not matter what size it is. And right now, what we're going to do is name our plane called ground, G-R-O-U-N-D. The reason we name our ground is because that when you are in industry and there's a lot of objects that are in your scene, it is very important to label your objects so that way you do not get confused at what you are selecting. It's very important. So the size again does not matter, but for this purpose I'm going to double click here and make this 150 by 150. I'm hitting tab in between here, and what you're going to see here is the length and width segments which are important right here. If you do not see them, the best way to show them is to go here to your realistic area and click that and make sure you show edge faces. When you show edge faces, you will see your 4x4 grid right here. So the more segments that you have in your scene or on your plane here, the easier it will be to deform and smoother looking your deforming ground, basically to make it smoother looking. So I'm going to make this by 50 by 50. Now then I'm going to use my move tool and I'm going to move my plane to the ground, the center of my universe, by going to the right here, X, Y, and Z, right clicking, and right clicking, so I know that this here is in my center of my universe. I'm going to hit G on my keyboard to get rid of that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the the modify tab right here, and I'm going to go down to my modify list and drop down, and I'm going to look for the modifier called noise. Now noise, once it's applied to this plane, will distort the look of the plane, and that's why it's important to have a lot of segments in here so it distorts smoothly, and you can create lots of cool effects, lots of ground, lots of mountains, all sorts of hills, valleys, etc. So how do we do that? We're going to play around with the scale and the Z factor. The first thing I'm going to do is play around with the Z factor and bring this up, and so you can see it. I'm just going to crank this up to say like 25. I'll just type in 25 for you, it'll be easier. And then I'm going to lower this down, the ripple effect, so you can start to see what I'm talking about. If you go too far, you get all that. So I'm going to lower it down, and I'm going to actually stick to 25 because that looks pretty good. And you now have created your ground plane. If you want to color this, you can color it a different color. It does not matter because it can be textured later. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start focusing on how to create our snow and our particles. So there's a couple methods to do that, but I'm going to show you the easiest way that I've learned how to do this. And the best way to do it for me is to go to the Create tab, and you're going to see this drop down box right here. If you click on that and you go to Particle Systems, you will see that there's an array of different types of particle emitters right here. Now I know there's one called snow, and that's the immediate thought you probably want to go to, but we're not going to go there right now. We're going to go to the PF source, and I'm going to click that, and I'm going to drag this out. Now what the PF source does is it drags out an emitter box. Think of it as just a box where particles come out of. And right now I'm going to center that over my land here by going right click, and right click, and I'm going to bring it up to Z axis just so I know that it's above my plane. Now I don't see much falling out of this right now because I'm on frame 0 I should say. I'm going to slide my timer to the right, and you'll notice that my timer is, as I move it, the particles start to show up on your screen. You can see them right here. Now the particles show up until frame 30. After frame 30, the particles will stop and they just fall off the face of the earth. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend that so it extends the entire length of our time frame here. I'm going to extend my time to say 200 frames so it's a little bit longer. The way I do that, anywhere on these arrows, if I right click on them, it will bring up a time configuration box. In this time configuration box, you can go down and click the end time event, and I'm just going to click 200 and hit enter, and you will see that my bottom time is now extended. There's a multiple way of doing this. I could have held control and right clicked and then did the same thing, go to time, configure, etc. I can drag and drop it left and right. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit number 6 on my keyboard and bring up the particle viewer. If you do not hit 6 or you don't know where to go, it's under the graph editor, and you're going to go see particle view right here, which is number 6. Once I bring that up, you will see that I'm going to bring this to the side, and you will see once I brought my particle emitter here, it created this new particle system, is what you're seeing here. In the particle viewer, you're going to see a work window and a bunch of tools and particle systems and things and icons down below here. Just think of this as your go-to bin to add cool effects to create every single special effect you could have imagined with particles. It's pretty cool stuff. So imagine any movie you've seen with like liquid lava coming out or slime coming out of the walls or water or whatever. This is what they're grabbing from and creating these different types of visual effects. So let's walk through it. PF source number 1. Right now our viewport has got 50%. It's showing a rendering of 100. It's the upper limit is what is that, 100,000, and viewport is in the frame, half frames. You don't have to get too crazy with this, but just remember, keep these numbers relatively defaulted to 0 for right now, or not 0 but defaulted to that. We're going to go to our renderer, rendering geometry right now. Right now you can set it to none. You can set it to bounding boxes or platform. We're going to leave it at geometry, and it's a single mesh, so you will see what our icons look like when they start falling out. You'll notice too that this here is connected by a little string. If I disconnect that string, you'll notice the particles fall apart because they're no longer connected. So we will bring those together by dragging and dropping that there, and you'll see they populate again. So in our event handler, let's go into this. They go in flow of order, so top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so what we're seeing here is little ticks. So these are little ticks, and we can change that later, and I'll show you what happens when we do that. So our birth rate. Our birth rate means how long do our particles come out of here, and how long do they last. So they start at frame 0, which is at the beginning of our frame. They start right here. There's number 1, and they stop at frame 30, which I showed you before. And there's only 200 ticks, or they last to 200 frames. So I'm going to change this to 200. Now what you'll see here is now that I have 200 frames that are falling with those ticks. I'm going to then talk about position. So the position, we don't really have to mess with this too much. I rather just leave it as default, and you'll see this unique seeds, and this basically talks about where are the positions of those little particles that are on your scene that you see right there. Where are they? So actually our birth rate, let's increase this to 500 so we can see more particles on our scene in our screen and at one time. Again, our position right here is just showcasing where they located, where our particles are located in the virtual space right now. It doesn't really matter, just leave it as is. Our speed of our particles are flowing right now at a rate of 300. That's very fast. We need to slow this down because it's like fluffy snow. So let's go to 25. As you see, when I have 25, actually let's turn this on and hit play, so that way you can visually see what's going on as we edit this. So as you see, before it was 300 and they were falling like rain, and now we're going to slow that down to 25, so it's a little bit more snow-like, if you will. You can see the different types of things here. You don't have to worry about that. Rotation means what are the particles doing when they're in the air? Are they twisting, rotating in 3D, etc.? So we're going to leave it as random 3D so that they have a random direction. The shape is the type of object that will be attached to our particles here. Right now, under display is what we are visually seeing right now. So right now it's displaying ticks. If I change this to dots, you'll see it changes to dots, and if I change it to circles, it changes to circles. If I change it to bounding boxes, it turns to bounding boxes. And I'm going to leave it on diamonds, or if I leave it on geometry, you will see the geometry is the shape that we have here, is what our shapes are. And I'm going to leave this as, you can change it to diamonds long, you can change it to hearts, you can change it to, I don't know, counting letters, letter counters, notes if you're into music or something like that. I'm going to leave it as cubes right now because I think that's kind of neat looking. And what I'm going to do is add some other effects to make this start to look more realistic. So what I'm going to do is, actually, you know what, let's not leave it to cubes. Let's leave it to, I don't know, a six-sided star. And I'm going to decrease the size of this so that it's a little bit smaller in size. And I'll go with 5. Okay, 5 seems kind of nice. You can change this to a size of your choice or an icon of your choice if you create another thing, and we can link that in later. So how do we do this? So let's move over here for a quick second. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add a deflector. And a deflector basically means when the particles fall to the ground, they bounce off. Because right now, you can see if I rotate this around, the particles are falling right through the floor. And that's not good, right? You see that? See how they're falling right through the floor? So how am I going to do this? I'm going to go to my space warps. And under my space warps, there's a thing called deflectors. And then the drop-down menu, deflectors. In deflectors, I'm going to go to my U deflector, and I'm going to click and drag out a U deflector. The U deflector basically takes an object and it bounces off of it. So it needs to know what do you want to do, what surface do you want to do. It doesn't matter what size or where it is, because you're going to pick the item it's going to bounce off of. So I'm going to select Pick Object, and I'm going to pick the ground plane as my object to bounce off of. Now, nothing is happening yet. So if I hit play, how come it's not bouncing off? It's still going through. Well, I have to make sure that I use my space warp, bind a space warp, and then click this and attach it to my particles. Once I do that, you might see it bounce off, but it's still not, because this here is not the collision has not been added to my event particle list here. So I'm going to go to my collision tab right here, because it's going to collide with my floor. I'm going to add that into here. And what's going to happen is, right now it says there's no collision. Well, I need to select the item. It's basically the same thing as a space warp. I can select by list, and I'm going to go to U deflector and select the only thing that's in my scene, and hit OK. So now that my particles that are coming out, they're spinning, they're rotating, they're falling, they have this star shaped, and they're going to collide with this ground. And what they're going to do is they're going to bounce off the ground. Now if I hit play, you will see all my particles are bouncing, and they're coming down, and they're going to go pew, and they're hitting everything. So what I wanted to do, snow doesn't bounce. As far as last time I checked, it doesn't do that. So I'm going to select the collides with. Instead of bounce, I'm going to hit stop. Once I hit stop, you'll see the particles will stick to the ground just like that. Now you can see that if I had a lot more particles emitting here, and a little bit more of a different type of texture, you have created your own very basic snow texture. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was very quick. My name's Aaron, and this is 3D Studio Max 2016 Snow. Thank you.